Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and today on Patriot Radio, China still moving forward with what appears to be preparations for the invasion of Taiwan, and more rhetoric out of the Chinese against the United States. Seems to be they're trying to save face after the negotiations. And on the European front, Tommy Robinson found not guilty on all counts of this trumped-up terrorism charge. A huge day for patriots in Europe. And here on the national front, President Trump draws the line on SNAP benefits and also on the subversion by the Democrats in the United States of America. Also, our guest today is John Guandolo, former FBI agent and expert on Islamic terrorism. We're going to be talking about what it means for New York today if Zohran Mamdani wins. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have all the information that you need before everybody else so you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. But no fear, we were made for this, so follow us at patriotradio.us/Telegram. Our Telegram channel, Patriot Radio US, aggregates across hundreds of different platforms and gives you breaking news and real-time intelligence analysis 24/7. Now, we also want to pray because this is a time where we should be praying for our leaders, praying for the nation. And so we do lift up our nation in prayer right now. patriotradio.us/prayer if you want to be prayed with. So let's pray. Father, we just thank you for the United States. And Lord, we just pray that every scheme of the enemy would be exposed right now and come to light. And Lord, I thank you right now that the righteous will rule and the unrighteous will not. In Jesus' name, amen. So that brings us to your wisdom from the word today, which is exactly along this line. Proverbs 29, verse 2. When the righteous increase, the people rejoice. But when a wicked person rules, people groan. Whether New York knows it or not, they're about to groan if they elect Zohran Mamdani. But I think Mamdani's about to groan as well because President Trump is going to allow him to try to run roughshod over the United States. This is really a turning point, a place of decision for the United States of America to continue down the road of freedom and liberty or to head back toward the failed road of socialism and communism, which leads to genocide always in every communist country, just a matter of degree. And so the issue for us as Christians is, should we vote? No, we're commanded to vote. And if Christians actually stand up in this time, we're the largest voting bloc in America, things will change, and they will change very quickly. That brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
Inside the billionaire network shaping MAGA's post-Trump future, Chris Buskirk lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he got wrapped up in Peter Thiel's network of, quote, dark enlightenment. The roots of the elitist Rockbridge network trace back to Buskirk, but have since expanded to include a bunch of people that we know. Now, that's interesting because what this article is claiming is that 1789 Capital, founded by Buskirk and Omid Malik, who is a Muslim, are looking at what it will be like after Trump in a technocratic era. And we're going to continue to expose these networks, but very clearly they tried to wrap in people we know, and some of those people figured it out. My point here is that who is paying for all this? And what outsized influence do the Qataris have in our technological future? And will it be technological or technocratic? And can the two actually be separated? Again, questions we need to be asking right now, but more importantly, policy needs to be made at the state and local level, if not at the national level, to rein in the potential abuses of technology in the very near future, and how if the presidency changes hands, God forbid, to the communists or the socialists, how would they use the existing system against us, patriots and Christians? Cybersecurity agents accused of working with notorious black hat hackers extort firms. Florida court filings allege 3 American employees went rogue and used their expertise to join forces with a gang behind worldwide ransomware disruption. They each collaborated with the notorious hacking group ALPHV, also known as Black Cat, that, in an attempt to extort their owners out of millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency. And I expect that there will be further attempts to corrupt those in the cybersecurity realm. Now, cybersecurity does not mean privacy, okay? I want to be really clear about that. And the more people use digital hygiene and the more people exercise good online habits regarding privacy, I think the better it will be for all of us. Now, this is still on the globalist front, but the United States did finally designate Nigeria a country of particular concern. Trump said that military action may be needed in Nigeria, along with an aid cutoff due to ongoing persecution of Christians. The U.S. State Department on Monday did this designation, and the department noted that Nigeria, as a country of particular concern, has systematic, ongoing, egregious violations of religious freedom. What most people don't know is that the Nigerian president is a Fulani Muslim, which is the same sect that is persecuting Christians in the north. And I think a lot of people are wondering if anything will actually change. Well, today, Nigeria is supposedly already making arrests. Quote, I'm already hearing that the Nigerian government is starting to snap in line, end quote. This was President Trump's actions, I think, are maybe having some impact. We really need to watch to see if this continues or if this is just a show. Quote, they're now reporting that they have arrested terrorists, that there are arrests happening, that they are countering some of these groups. Trump won't rule out sending U.S. troops to Nigeria, even though these arrests are being made. So I think this is a message to the rest of the world regarding the persecution of Christians. I'm glad to see it because it is going against the globalist narrative that has been attacking Christians for 5 decades and longer. That brings us now to the China front. Starbucks is selling control of Chinese business to Boyu Capital in a $4 billion deal. The new joint venture aims to regain momentum amid growing competition in China. The Hong Kong-based private equity firm Boyu Capital and the retail coffee giant, which values Chinese business at more than $13 billion, will form this joint venture. One more reason, at least from my perspective, not to drink Starbucks or mermaid juice, as some of our pastors call it. Documentary on CCP's organ harvesting shocks Chester County audience. Now, I find it fascinating that people still don't understand this. In the documentary called State Organs, dozens of attendees were visibly shaken as they learned about Chinese Communist Party's systematic murder of prisoners of conscience, primarily Falun Gong practitioners, for their vital organs. This unmasking of transplant abuse in China and 20 years of families searching for their loved ones who went missing under mysterious circumstances in the early 2000s, they've uncovered this horror of a state-run organ harvesting operation killing innocent Chinese people. What's not mentioned in here is the persecution of Christians as well in China. That's why the United States should always take a hard line and understand that Chinese communists are not our friends. Pete Hegseth says that the U.S.-South Korean alliance will stay focused on deterring North Korea. Pentagon chief praised South Korea for its plans to raise military spending and called the Asian country a model ally of the United States, with one big asterisk, that they are persecuting their opposition in South Korea and that the current regime is very closely linked to China. So again, are these just words? I think we will soon see. Patrolling Australia's trade routes increasingly risky, Defense Minister warns. China's military buildup demands a response from Australia and other nations in the region. Now, the United States, as we reported yesterday, had just moved a carrier group into the South China Sea, the largest deployment in something like 20 years. And China, it looks like, is countering with an exercise called military training, where there will be no entry in a prohibited zone. Again, a flex regarding the South China Sea. Now, here, again, is more indicators of the Chinese buildup, but also, I think, a lot of safe face-saving measures, excuse me. And I think that the reason, too, that they're doing it right now is because they know that Trump is showing U.S. power, and they cannot counter it, really, so they have to make it look like they are. However, we don't understand Asian culture and face-saving. That means that they will very likely continue their push to invade Taiwan. They may just put it off into the future. After Trump is president, I don't know exactly. Or this may all be a ruse like the Japanese did before World War II when they struck a trade deal with the U.S. 6 to 8 months before the war and before Pearl Harbor. Either way, we should not let down our guard. Russia and China have almost completely switched to settlements and national currencies. The Russian finance minister stated that 99.1% of all bilateral transactions between the two countries are now conducted in yuan and rubles. Again, an attempt to replace the dollar, but clearly it is having very little effect, which is what is predicted because the US dollar is so dominant. It would be years, if at all, for it to be replaced. Chinese nationals in Korea have been charged with treason. They were apparently spying for China. 2 high school students were detained for illegally filming fighter jets landing and taking off from a South Korean Air Force base. And they were using DSLR cameras and mobile phones at around 3:30 p.m. on March 20th. So again, just proof that China is not our friend. China is not South Korea's friend either. China warns Trump to avoid crossing 4 red lines or risk trade truce collapse. Again, I think this is face-saving. One of the red lines is Taiwan, interestingly enough. Despite successful Trump-Xi meeting, U.S.-China rivalry remains irreconcilable. And I would agree with that assessment because the Chinese have always sought, every communist has always sought one target, the United States of America. And the former Soviet Union, still under the control of KGB operatives, as a matter of fact, still seeks the destruction of the United States. They always have, just like the Islamists. Now, Islamic terrorism, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this is part of the understanding that you can't negotiate with it. China and Russia have been detonating fissile material in nuclear weapons tests. China's denial of testing is false, according to Tom Cotton. He got these consultations from Director Radcliffe and his team. They have confirmed that the CIA assesses that both Russia and China have conducted supercritical nuclear weapons tests in excess of U.S. zero-yield standards. So the outrage coming from them about U.S. tests that won't do that is ridiculous. And in a very provocative piece by Stephen Young and Bradley Thayer, did the United States just win the Vietnam War? And the answer, surprisingly, is yes. Half a century after America's withdrawal, Vietnam has quietly vindicated U.S. sacrifice, abandoning abandoning Marxism for nationalism and embracing the very ideals America once defended. I would challenge every Vietnam veteran out there who has been struggling with their sacrifice and the sacrifice of their comrades to read this article. Very, very good analysis. And after we come back from the break, Israel still has not got all the hostages back. And here at home, Trump draws a red line regarding SNAP benefits.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with the Middle East front. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz are leading a high-level security meeting focused on authorizing the next phases of escalation against Hezbollah in Lebanon because Hezbollah is attempting to rearm. Hamas has announced that it recovered the body of a deceased hostage during excavation efforts today. If that hostage is actually confirmed to be Israeli, then it will bring the number left to 7 that have not been turned over. And they are trickling them out as an apparent strategy. In case you missed it, high chances Pakistani forces will be in Gaza. The U.S. drafts UN Security Council plan for Gaza governance and stabilization force. And the draft that's been circulated would rely on Pakistan. On November 3rd, American drones attacked a motorcycle linked to al-Qaeda operatives in Al-Shabwan in northern Marib province of Yemen. And this is again how the United States has very quietly been taking out leaders of these various terror proxies in the Middle East. That will continue. Iran's supreme leader, during a meeting with thousands of students, said, quote, "Sometimes the Americans say they want to cooperate with Iran. Cooperation with Iran is impossible as long as the U.S. continues to support the cursed Zionist regime, maintain military bases, and interfere in the region." Very interesting. They always invoke curses when God invokes blessings over Israel. And I know some people will be offended to that, and that's okay. Go read the scripture. Ukraine is on path to EU membership. What does that have to do with the Middle East? Well, it would significantly shift the Middle East because EU membership would be, well, not NATO, but close. Zelensky says, noting the country is ready to open the first 3 negotiation clusters and calling on the EU to remove all obstacles. That brings us to the Russia front. Poland has charged 2 Russian citizens with spying for Russia's FSB. The couple, who had refugee status, allegedly collected intelligence on Polish foreign ministry officials, academic exchange programs, and Russian opposition figures. A trial set for December 8th. And this is going to be a continuing cycle as European intelligence agencies continue to roll up the infiltration of Russian agents in Eastern Europe. Lukoil announced this week it is selling all foreign assets after new U.S. Treasury sanctions made overseas operations impossible, marking the end of 3 decades of global expansion for Russia's second largest oil company. The forced sale includes the Burgas refinery in Bulgaria that processes 10 million tons of crude annually. And that will be another decoupling from Russia that Europe very definitely needs to remain independent. The decision came within a week of new blocking measures that froze dollar and euro transactions. Lukoil's price share fell 12% in 4 trading days. Belgian soldiers have been authorized to shoot down drones flying over military bases as the Europeans realize there will be an attempt to disrupt holiday travel coming up in the next few weeks. In the end, the drones calmly flew north toward the Netherlands. The 3 large drones were spotted on November 1st and 2nd over a military base in Belgium. That's just one report of literally hundreds of incursions into Europe. Rheinmetall, Europe's largest arms manufacturer, has begun building a 155 millimeter artillery shell plant in the Lithuanian city of I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but Bisagala. And this is, again, the key to winning war: logistics, and specifically artillery shells. It's expected to be online mid-2026 and initially produce 35 shells and ramp up to 100,000 shells per year by 2027. Only 1% of Germans oppose the deportation of Syrian refugees. According to a poll by Bild, 99% of over 17,800 respondents say they support sending Syrian refugees back to their home country, which is why, very likely, the German government has now started to deport Syrian refugees. Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced, saying the civil war in Syria is over and there are absolutely no grounds for asylum in Germany. Voluntary returns are encouraged, but those with criminal records may face forced deportation. Fascinating. They're doing exactly what the AFD has advocated. We'll see if it actually happens. Tommy Robinson acquitted of all charges under the Terrorism Act. The judge was blistering in his criticism of police, saying their testimony lacked credibility and that they had, in fact, targeted Tommy for political reasons, which is illegal. I share the sentiments of many that this is an incredible outcome for patriots in Europe. A Syrian national was arrested in Berlin for planning a jihadist attack. The suspect, identified as 22-year-old Abdallah, is reportedly a supporter of ISIS. Further, a German Antifa-affiliated blog has posted a claim of responsibility for the arson attack of an AFD party manager's vehicle in Hamburg. The post also threatened MAGA and said that they will be murdered like Charlie Kirk. See if the Germans investigate that. Which brings us to a very feisty South America front. Peru has severed diplomatic relations with Mexico after Mexican authorities granted political asylum to former Prime Minister Betsy Chavez, who is under investigation for rebellion. President Jose Jerry's office accused Mexico of repeated interference in the internal affairs of Peru. So what you're seeing happen is Peru now beginning to align with Argentina, Paraguay, El Salvador as a bloc in South America that is pro-U.S., pro-West, and anti-communist, which will come in very handy soon when the United States begins military actions in South America, as many are predicting. Russia is already supplying weapons to Venezuela and sees no obstacles for transferring the Oreshnik ICBM, which is a direct threat to the United States because that ICBM, if it goes to Venezuela, would be able to hit the United States. Russia is actually one of Venezuela's key military technical partners. We supply the country with nearly the entire range of weapons from small arms to aviation. Thank you for admitting what we've been talking about for a long time, that the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians have been using Venezuela as a hub to attack the United States, not only through the drug trade, but through our elections. And that's going to come out soon. Also, the United States, I think, maybe countering this, brought forward Shield AI and the XBAT, a new next-generation AI-powered stealth drone designed to operate as a loyal wingman in combat zones. The vertical takeoff jet can fly 2,000 nautical miles, reach 50,000 feet, and carry air-to-air missiles or electronic warfare payloads. So this launch comes amidst the U.S. drive to expand AI warfare capabilities under Trump's drone initiative, and also a clear challenge to Russia. That brings us to the national front. The foreign terror designation can boost U.S. efforts to dismantle Antifa. Now, during the discussions on this, Antifa networks were said by some to not exist, and very clearly, according to court filings, they do exist. The question is, who is funding them? And Trump has come out recently and said that the people that are funding them are being directly investigated, including George Soros and his huge network funding Marxist and communist fronts all over the United States and the world. When will it happen? that bank accounts are frozen, that these lists will come out and their connections to Democrat politicians, including in the Pacific Northwest. Can't be soon enough. FBI Director Kash Patel announces that 2 men were arrested in connection with the November 1st Harvard Medical School explosion. Be interesting to see who they are affiliated with. The FAA has lifted the flight suspension at Reagan National Airport after authorities cleared a reported security threat. That security threat was an alleged bomb threat aboard a United Airlines aircraft, and you can see people running out of the airplane as they got onto the tarmac. President Trump launched an explosive new website to expose illegal immigrants receiving Medicaid benefits at taxpayer expense. And he was publishing the names, mugshots, and criminal charges of these illegal immigrants receiving benefits from the federal health care program, showing why we should not be held hostage by the Democrats with a government shutdown. All Americans should be outraged by this. It's our tax money, not the government's or the Democrats. Stephen Miller admitted the Democrat Party via the Biden-Harris terrorist administration, these are his words, not mine, devised a scheme to import illegal aliens into the country by the millions, granting them parole, which gives them work permits, which gives them social security numbers, which gives them access to the voting booth, and finally hooking them on welfare like addicts hooked on drugs, all with the sole purpose of participating in U.S. elections and ultimately overthrowing the constitutional republic of the United States, end quote. Yes, this was a two-pronged attack, undermining the integrity of the election system, and the second was illegal aliens in the country skewing the vote. Trump administration correcting something that has been going on for decades. Trump says SNAP assistance will resume only after Democrats agree to reopen the federal government. This is despite a court ordering the Trump administration to pay, which is very likely an illegal order because once the authority for the program ended, the judge does not have jurisdiction. I don't know why anybody's talking about this, but the judge does not have jurisdiction once the authority for the program ends. Only Congress constitutionally has the power to authorize the program. So, President Trump saying that, quote, radical left Democrats, when they open the government, which they can easily do and not before, that's when SNAP benefits will be reinstated. For the 14th time, Senate Democrats have voted down a motion to reopen the government, keeping the shutdown in place as of this morning. And the president saying that the Senate should do the nuclear option and remove the Senate filibuster to immediately, not just reopen the government, but confirm the people that Trump has put forward for nominations and should use that to pass the rest of the agenda that President Trump wants to, so that the Democrats cannot continue their subversive activities in the United States and in the halls of power. Now, he gives a very dark prediction for the future if that doesn't happen. Now, yes, the Senate could already pass and could already, if they wanted to, approve many of Trump's nominees like they have in the past en masse. But what's happening is old Senate rules and tradition are keeping those nominees from being brought forward. In other words, Democrats are holding hostage, and the Republicans, in some cases, unfortunately, are allowing it to happen. We should no longer be held hostage. And in the wake of this, quote, mass chaos is coming, end quote, as U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned Tuesday that if federal government shutdown continues, Congress may force parts of the national airspace to close to ensure safety. In other words, disruption of holiday travel like we've been talking about. Also, Dick Cheney has passed away at 84 years old, and with him, the myth that so-called conservative ranchers would run the Republican Party and attack and destroy conservatives. And you know, if you are watching this, and you know me, who I am actually talking about. Breaking: election machines have gone down in multiple locations across Cumberland County, New Jersey. Surprise, surprise, it's election day. So election machines go down. And oh, hey, look, there's bomb threats at a bunch of polling places as well, trying to disenfranchise people and get them not to vote. Linda Sarsour warns she'll ensure Zoran Mamdani fulfills his campaign promises, including dismantling an NYPD unit that polices terrorism threats, protests, and riots if he's elected. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Literally, they want to remove the organizations that would stop terrorism. Wonder why. President Trump confirms Newsom's redistricting vote is under criminal review. That's interesting. And in addition to that, Comey, Hillary, Brennan look like they're all cooked because, according to a new court filing, a handwritten note from Comey himself reveals he knew about the scheme behind the Russian collusion hoax. An HRC plan to tie Trump, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and also the fact that he had a code name on here that was scratched out for Stephen Halper. The fact that highly incriminating documents, including Comey's handwritten notes showing he knew from the start the Russian collusion story was a Clinton campaign hoax, were found in burn bags locked inside an unused skiff. These are secured intelligence facilities at FBI headquarters, is deeply strange and has bothered me since it first came to light. There are a few possible explanations, but one is a quiet whistleblower deliberately preserved them, knowing they were too explosive to destroy. That's very likely what happened. But exposed they have become. And lastly, Kash Patel reportedly removed the San Antonio FBI special agent in charge linked to Arctic frost. Or more on the slate to go as well, and accountability coming to the intelligence community. At least it's a start. When we come back from the break, our guest, John Guandolo.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with our guest today, John Guandolo. He is a former FBI agent, johnguandolo.com, and he is also an expert on Islamic terrorism and the infiltration of Islam into the United States of America. John, it's great to have you back on Patriot Radio.
Thank you. It's great to be back on with you.
So you're not voting for Zoran Mamdani today, I presume. So what is the implication of this in New York? I mean, Linda Sarsour comes out and admits they want to eliminate the NYPD unit in charge of investigating terrorism. I would think that's an investigative clue.
Yeah, I mean, Mamdani is a jihadi. He hangs out with jihadis. He supports Sharia and jihad. And he's pretty open about who he is and what he's all about. So if he becomes elected mayor of New York, you have, I think, two very distinct issues. One, you could make the argument voters get what they get, but the other problem constitutionally is that the constitutionally demands and requires that the American people live under a Republican form of government. And so that immediately creates constitutional issues, as it does with a number of mayors around the country who are and officials. The Attorney General in Minnesota, who's a Hamas official, and mayors in a variety of places who are jihadis or communists. And the president has finally started taking some action about communities that are being ruled by communists. But I just think that that's a beginning of what more needs to happen. But yeah, New York is facing what I think is a constitutional crisis, because the citizens of New York City, it's just like the idea, if every legislator in any state voted to make rape or theft or something else, lawful, well, they could do it, but they can't do it. Violates the principles that undergird the Constitution. You can't create a law that violates the natural rights of the other citizens. So this is kind of where we are. And I think part of the problem is, number one, we don't understand the enemy, but many people voting, even those who are lawfully voting, don't understand how our government works and how it's supposed to work.
Well, you actually brought this up, and this is really the culmination of a book you wrote called Raising a Jihadi Generation, Understanding the Muslim Brotherhood Movement in America. This is the logical consequence of allowing this to continue for so many years in the United States and the misunderstanding of Sharia law. Now, we see little bits of it. Mamdani came out the other day and he said that they were not going to enforce some domestic violence laws. And everybody, I think, immediately that understands Sharia is like, he's just trying to enforce Sharia in a backdoor way. If you could explain that to everybody watching and listening right now, this really is about Sharia law trying to supplant, as you said, our constitutional republic.
Right. Well, I think it's good to maybe remind your audience that everything the global Islamic movement does, whether it's the suit-wearing jihadis of the movements like the Muslim Brotherhood, Tablighi Jamaat, Jamaat-e Islami, etc., whether it's the military organizations like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Boko Haram, Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Shabaab, Islamic Jihad, etc., or whether it's the geopolitical, gorilla in the room, the OIC, which is the umbrella organization of every Muslim nation on earth, all 56 Islamic nations on earth. All of them have stated clearly and publicly, including the OIC, every Muslim nation on earth is on record saying that their only understanding of relations between Muslim and non-Muslim nations is through Sharia. That's what Al-Qaeda and ISIS and all the military jihadi groups say. And it's the purpose of any of these Islamic groups, because it's the purpose of Islam, to wage war against non-Muslims, to establish an Islamic state under Sharia on the whole earth. That's it. And so that's the beginning point. That's the start point. And Sharia does allow for violence in many cases. And when it comes to domestic issues, it allows men to have sex with children, with boys, it allows them to have 4 wives. It allows them to beat their wives. It allows brutal punishments for all kinds of things, adultery, leaving Islam, to homosexuals, to all kinds of things. So that's Sharia, and any form of Sharia is allowing all forms of Sharia in the door. So when you allow a halal market in your community, you're saying that killing people who leave Islam is okay, because you're saying Sharia is okay. You, the non-Muslim, don't get to choose which part of Sharia gets to be implemented. Once you open the door, you get the whole enchilada. And I think that's very important for people to remember. I also think it's important to remember, in the same way, you can't parse out terrorists like Mamdani. You can't parse out Hamas and say, well, let's just look at the things they do in the community, the charitable works, right? They do the charitable works for a number of reasons. One is because it's required under Islam to get to paradise, according to them. But we're going to let this food bank in, but we don't want the terrorists. Well, you don't get to choose. Once you open the door to Hamas, you get all of Hamas. Once you open the door to Mamdani, you open the door to Sharia and to jihad. That's the way it is.
So when we come back from the break, we're going to discuss further about Nigeria and why the Nigerian president would say there is no genocide happening in that country.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with former FBI agent John Guandolo, johnguandolo.com, also the author of Raising a Jihadi Generation. And I want to just shift gears a little bit. I was really happy to see that President Trump recognized the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. And I was very happy to see that he was even offering military force to stop the genocide in Nigeria. But then the Nigerian president came out and said, well, there's no real genocide going on. Why would he say that?
Oh, first of all, what is a genocide to us and what is a genocide in Islam? I mean, in Islam, killing non-Muslims is lawful. So just linguistically, legally, technically, it cannot be any kind of a genocide in Nigeria. They're just fulfilling Islamic law. So I think, again, it comes down to language. Again, when you understand the Islamic movement, you have to translate, as I always say, English to English using the filter of Sharia. So waging war against non-Muslims is the purpose of Islam until an Islamic state exists under Sharia. You know, when people start arguing with you or me or any of your listeners, I always find the question when people are like, you don't understand Sharia. And I'm like, okay, let's just go with that. So what is the purpose of Islam then? And then you watch their eyes swirl like the little rainbow circle on your computer when it's thinking. And if they give you an answer, it won't be the truth. Or normally, so far, 100% of the time, the answer I get is people will say, I actually don't know. I'm like, well, you're arguing with me, but you just admit you don't even know what the purpose of Islam is. And the purpose of Islam, and you can read it in textbooks for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds in U.S. Islamic schools. It's to wage jihad against non-Muslims until Sharia is imposed on the earth and a global Islamic state is established. I mean, that's it. And so we go back to any question we answer about this goes back to that point and the fact that it's a command for Muslims to wage war against non-Muslims. So what's going on from an Islamic perspective, what's going on in Nigeria can't be a genocide. It's just the implementation of Allah's divine law.
Well, which brings us to this question. There's persecution of Christians going on in Nigeria, rightfully recognized by the Trump administration. But here in the United States, there is also the implementation of Sharia law and even Sharia patrols in major cities on our soil, which by default means there is oppression and persecution of Christians going on in the United States. What is the Trump administration missing when it comes to the homeland here in America?
I think they're missing the whole ball of wax. They're missing that the Islamic movement in the United States is much worse than it is in Nigeria. And just because we don't have 7,000 or 8,000 killed so far this year, it's actually more now in Nigeria, that somehow isn't a problem. But we do have a jihadi who's about to be elected the mayor of the largest city in America that they targeted. We've got ISIS and Al-Qaeda threatening attacks as early as today, but certainly more than one major attack that we know is planned and green-lighted. We've got, even more important than that, you've got both Sunni Muslim Brotherhood and others, suit-wearing jihadis, as well as other parts of the Islamic movement inside the United States, making foreign policy, making big decisions. We've had under the past administration, the director of intelligence for the National Security Council, Maher Bitar, Hamas. We've had Al-Qaeda guys serving as the advisor to President Clinton and candidate Bush. We've had ISIS commanders trained by the State Department. We've got currently in the Trump administration, Mossad Boulos, Batten for the other team, whose son married Mr. Trump's daughter, Tiffany, in what I would suggest is likely a counterintelligence operation from the get-go. But even putting that aside, you've got Hamza Yusuf, one of the senior Muslim Brotherhood scholars, Islamic legal scholars, working on the Trump's U.S. Religious Liberty Commission, along with convicted terrorist Randall Royer, a case that I worked back at the Washington field office after 9/11. He's a no BS terrorist training camp graduate, jihadi who fought in Chechnya and worked with Lashkar-e-Taiba, designated terrorist group. You've got Hamas leader Raibul Chowdhury on the executive committee of Hamas, doing business as CARE in Pennsylvania, working with and traveling with the Trump team. It's a complete goat rope. So I don't expect, from what I'm seeing, the leaders of the global Islamic movement, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, we're now renewing and creating new deals to sell them weapons with which they will use to kill us, and giving them money, giving them support, letting them come into our country. And we're viewing them as an ally, despite the fact they're funding the subversion of the United States on our college campuses, through our chambers of commerce, through our churches, through building mosques and Islamic centers that are hostile inside the United States. It's the end of that question. I don't think can be reached as far as what's going on. And I would say it's not just that the Trump administration isn't doing anything about it. What they're doing is actually helping to advance the Islamic movement in the United States.
So regarding the terror threat you just mentioned, from now until next February, what does that look like? What are they actually planning? What has actually been greenlighted?
Well, you've got the Islamic State has put out a statement that I saw earlier that appears to be legitimate, of calling for attacks immediately in New York City, which I think is
right.
To call it ironic would be to water it down, but I think it's pretty amazing what we're seeing, and that everything is so overt. It's what's shocking to me, and we still have leaders in this country who are still incapable of processing the data. But so we've got that. The Islamic State says they've got over 100 operatives, 109, I think was the number, here in the United States, and they're asking them to, fire away on that plan, whatever that is, in New York, and specifically in New York City. Then you've got the plot reported by former CIA targeting officer and case officer, Sarah Adams, that's been now detailed, and more has been added to it. And when the members of Congress were briefed by NCTC, and some of them spoke and shared some of that information with some colleagues, and that's been made public. We know now that there are at least 5 U.S. cities under threat of a renewed Al-Qaeda attack, which is actually, although it's being led by Al-Qaeda, it's an amalgam of many groups that are working together for both security reasons and because of skill level. And they're in place now. And Al-Qaeda claims they have over 1,000 soldiers here, but we know that they have a number of cells here, so they certainly have at least many dozen, and they're targeting soft targets in the United States, hospitals, schools, but the primary target is hospitals, and the secondary are other soft targets, so that the people that aren't killed in these attacks won't have anywhere to go in the cities these things take place in, because the hospitals will be incapacitated, or at least that's the objective. And I just want to point out one more thing regarding these impending attacks that the NCTC has finally publicly announced, at least in a very vague, unclassified spotlight report that they put out a couple weeks ago. The Attorney General Bondi, Ms. Bondi, the director of NCTC, Joe Kent, the president's own press secretary, Ms. Levitt, they all are using the phrase violent extremism to describe these threats. And that, if there isn't a bigger green light for the Islamic movement to tell it that America is still catastrophically clueless and its leaders are apparently incapable of processing factual data to understand these are Islamic movements, not extremist movements, that the communist movement is a communist movement, not an extremist movement. And so long as they're chasing, the U.S. government is chasing the unicorn called violent extremism, they're not actually targeting and going after jihadis and communists in the United States. And hence we will lose. There's no way to win. You can't launch a helium-filled pink balloon and call it violent extremism and put all your resources to finding it and shooting it down and thinking that's going to somehow have any impact whatsoever on the ground in the real world of counterterrorism, and actually impact not only the violent, the military groups, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. But you've got to capture and kill the suit-wearing jihadis as well, the leaders of ISNA and ICNA and Muslim American Society and MSA and CARE and MGAGE and Muslim Advocates and all of them. But we're not only not doing that, we're taking advice from them. So, I mean, this is why I have said for a long time the only answer is citizens learning how to identify these organizations and individuals in their local counties and lawfully flushing them out so they can't operate in your county. And right now, that's the best we could do without any governors or anyone at the federal level actually deciding to pull their head out of their butts and actually do their jobs and go after the enemies.
What, in your estimation, would be the core message to local law enforcement, maybe even state level law enforcement that are watching the show or listening today regarding the threats to the homeland?
I think it's you need to unhook yourself from the idea that the only thing that your constitutional oath requires you to pursue are acts of violence or impending acts of violence. The massive network of thousands of organizations, jihadi network in the United States, exists in almost every policeman's community. Everyone, and in every state, all 50 states, there is a jihadi community. In some, there are smaller communities, and some they're massive, but they're there. And your oath of office requires you to pursue them, to find them, and to flush them out, using all authority that you have under the Constitution and through state and federal law. So that's the message: is you're not just looking for the guy who's building the bomb or wants to shoot the gun in a school. As a matter of fact, according to the Islamic movement, that the violence is actually a support mechanism for the much larger non-violent effort, but that effort still seeks to overthrow the constitutional republic and your state constitution. So you have a duty to ensure it makes no movement and that those doing that are crushed like the cockroaches they are. And there are many ways to do it. But that's the thing. We got to stop focusing on merely the violence. And police are like, well, we can't arrest somebody before a crime. No, there is a crime being committed. They're conspiring to commit murder. They're conspiring to launder money. They're conspiring to materially support terrorism. They're conspiring to overthrow your state constitution. And along the way, they're breaking other laws. And it's likely that, first of all, every national Islamic organization in the United States is hostile, and they exist in your community. So find out which one. Is it the Muslim Student Association on your college campus? Is it the local chapter of Engage or CARE or an Islamic Society or Islamic Association or the Helping Hands, ICNA, Helping Hands or ICNA Relief or an ICNA chapter? Which is it? But they're all hostile. So once you know they're hostile, as a matter of fact and evidence, do your homework. By Raising a Jihadi Generation and read it. And then use the evidence. You can find the case evidence online. A lot of it's on my website at johnguandolo.com, and figure out how to take them down once you know they're bad. I mean, this is not rocket science. Just the lack of aggressiveness by investigators, I think, mostly has to do with they're assuming the FBI knows what it's doing. But right. I know a lot of state and local police that do not assume that, and they're smarter than that. But they are still responsible to protect their community. And those are a few of the ways they can do it. And of course, bring our Into Action program into your community for citizens and the 3-day Understanding and Investigating Hostile Networks program for police and others, prosecutors. Those are my recommendations, my thoughts on it.
John Guandolo, thanks for joining me today. Really always an incredible conversation. And thank you for your diligence over all these years. I know it doesn't really help to know that you were right all this time, but you were right all this time. And at least some people are now listening. God bless and keep up the fight.
Thank you. Bless you.
JohnGuandolo.com. So what can you do? Tell your local law enforcement, your local citizen leaders about the Into Action program and also about the law enforcement program regarding hostile networks. It's going to take average, everyday Americans to stand up right now and pray for our country today. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. The awakening is here, so keep up the fight.